Hello to anyone who's already joined in. Just waiting a few minutes to get started at 8 o'clock. Hope you're all well. Hi to those of you who've just joined in. Welcome. Okay, if you have joined in, I'll say it now and I'll say it again in a few minutes. There's a chat box at the bottom of the page, and if you just sign in as a guest, put your name, you can leave a comment to say hi or any comments that you want to make during the presentation. So if you want to go ahead and do that, that would be great. Just wait until 8 o'clock to get started. I don't want to miss anyone to miss anything. Okay, so my clock says 8 o'clock. So welcome to today's webinar. This is a webinar called Surviving the Fourth Trimester, and I'm happy that you are all here and you've been able to join in. Firstly, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Janine Esbrand and I am a life coach at Lightbox Coaching. I'm also a lawyer and a mummy to a beautiful 10-month-old little boy. Lightbox is a coaching service, particularly for women that are going through a time of transition. And I work a lot with mums who are transitioning from being a working woman to being a mother. And so today's webinar is about that transition into motherhood. And so I'm hoping that the information that I'm going to share today will be useful to you. I'll just say once again that there is the opportunity to comment throughout the presentation. So if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there is a comments box, and if you can log in as a guest, just put your name, and then if you want to leave any comments or you have any questions as we go through the presentation, leave them there. And at the end, I will spend a few minutes just going through those. We will be here for about 45 minutes. So yeah, get comfortable, relax, and yeah, I hope you enjoy what we're going to go through today. Firstly, I'm just going to touch on what the fourth trimester is, because you might have thought to yourself, fourth trimester means 3 different sections of something, and she's talking about the fourth trimester. So we're just going to touch on that. If you already know what that is, great, but if not, we're going to touch on that to start with. Then we're going to explore expectations versus reality in motherhood. Then we're going to look at a bit about advice and receiving advice from your friends and your family and how you kind of deal with that. Then we'll move on to talk about your identity, your new identity as a mother. And then lastly, we're going to talk a bit about self-care and how you can make sure you're caring for yourself. Before we hop onto the presentation, I'm going to be putting up a PowerPoint presentation. But before I do that, I also just want to say congratulations to you, because you're either a new mummy or you've been a mummy for a while or you're about to be a mummy. And so I wanted to say congrats on that, because being a mum is one of the most amazing jobs you could ever take on. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, which will show you the PowerPoint presentation for today's session. Okay, so here we are with the first page. So as you know, it's a free webinar. Thank you for being here once again. And we're talking about surviving the fourth trimester. I've just gone on to the welcome. So this just covers what I've said already. We'll be here for about 50 minutes. And again, feel free to leave any comments in the comments box. A bit about me. So again, I've mentioned that my name is Janine and I'm a life coach with a background in law. I'm also a corporate lawyer. And part of the reason why I started Lightbox was because I wanted to be able to help shine the light on the potential of people and help them to really unpack the tools that are required for them to really achieve success. Hence why I called it Lightbox. And working as a lawyer, I worked alongside a lot of professional women who have worked really hard and then they go off on maternity leave, and sometimes it's difficult to figure out their new identity after that. So since becoming a mum, I've decided that I really want to work with women in transition and help them to really fulfill their role as a mother in the best way that they can. So what is the fourth trimester? So the fourth trimester is the first 3 months of a baby's life. So the concept, the fourth trimester, kind of came about by a doctor called Dr. Harvey, who is a professor who also wrote a book called The Happiest Baby on the Block. And what he really explores is the fact that the first 3 months for a baby is a massive transition for them. Going from being in the mother's womb to then being in the outside world, it takes them a while to be able to adapt to their new environment. So the first 3 months is kind of an extension of their growth as a new human being. And so it'd be useful just to do a quick comparison. So you may well have thought about this when you're dealing with your children, your babies, and thought about the transition that they've made. But I thought seeing it on a table would be useful for you. So quick comparison. So in the womb, there's muffled sounds, everything's kind of muffled. And then when the baby comes out into the world, the sound is really loud. In the womb, there's a constant warm temperature, and outside this fluctuating temperature. So it's hot, then it's cold. When they're inside, they have a constant source of nutrition that's coming directly from mummy. And when they come out, they experience hunger and thirst for the first time. When they're on the inside, they have constant contact with their mother, and then on the outside, they have a lot less contact than they were used to. In the womb, they have a very confined space, and when they come out, there's lots of space. So it's complete opposites for them. So I guess you could say it is understandable why these little humans can sometimes be so demanding, and you may have experienced your baby just crying for no reason and you don't know what's wrong, but really it's them going through a major adjustment in terms of learning how to deal with all the different their different senses and the different experiences being on the outside. So that's a bit of background in terms of how your baby might feel. And obviously for you may never have dealt with babies before, you've never had your own baby before. So dealing with that demanding baby is a massive transition for you also. So now we're going to just with that backdrop, we're going to talk about how you can perhaps how you can adapt to some of the fourth trimester challenges that your baby might be throwing up at you. So I mentioned before, we're going to touch on, in this order, we're going to touch on expectations versus realities, dealing with advice and setting boundaries, embracing your new identity, and making sure you look after yourself. So first up is expectations versus reality. So in this picture, at the top, you've got an expectation sometimes that you know, when you're sleeping with your baby, it would just be lovely and everyone will be so peaceful and calm. And then at the bottom, you've got the picture of the baby with his foot over his mother's face. And that for some people is actually their reality. And I can testify to that because my 10-month-old, if he is in our bed, ends up with his foot on my face or his fingers in my eyes, or he's jumping on his dad's head. It's very much not what I thought it would be if I had my baby sleeping in my bed. So expectations versus reality. The problem with expectations sometimes is that when there's a mismatch between expectations and your current reality, it can be a source of frustration. And a lot of the time we form our expectations from different sources, so that it might be from family, it might be from friends, from books that you've read, from movies, from social media. You've painted a picture of what you expect motherhood to be from various sources, and when it doesn't always match up with reality, we can find ourselves getting upset, frustrated, and not understanding why things aren't the way you thought they were going to be. I can give a prime example with my son. He is 10 months old and he hasn't yet slept through the night for his entire life. But my mum was telling me when he was 3 months old that he should be sleeping through the night soon because I slept through the night when I was 3 months old. So with that information, I then thought, well, what's wrong with him? Why is he not sleeping through the night? And then when a lot of my friends' babies started to sleep through the night, I then was thinking, well, I expect him to be doing what everyone else is doing. What's the matter with him? And when I had my head in that headspace, I would get really frustrated with the whole getting up in the night and stuff. But then when I decided to just think about the fact that every baby is unique and that he will sleep through the night in his own time, then the way that I approached the situation was different. My mindset was different. And so I felt different. So a good thing to remind yourself and a good thing to remember is that your baby has not read the books that you've read. So you may have read various books on parenting, you may have listened to various things, you may have had loads of advice from different people. And yes, people will draw advice from their own experiences and they will share what's worked for them. But your baby has their own agenda. He or she will do what they're going to do. And so it's worth spending the time just getting to know them and figuring out what works for you and your family. You are the only mother that your baby's going to have, and they're the only them, fill in the blank for their name, that you're going to have. So it's important that you allow yourself the time and space to figure each other out, and then base your expectations of how their behavior is going to be going forward on your experience with them. If you try and do that more so than rely on external ways to set your expectations, you're less likely to find yourself in a place where you're frustrated or not feeling like you're getting what you want to get out of this stage of motherhood. And so I throughout the presentation, I'm going to just get you to stop a few times and just take a few moments to just think about the way you're approaching things and the way you may be able to look at things differently. So the first thing we're going to talk about now is for you to think about an expectation that you had of motherhood that does not now match your current reality. So just think back to when you were pregnant or when you were about to have your baby or when you first had your baby. What expectations did you have, and how are they different now from your reality? So yeah, I'm just going to give you a few moments to have a quick think about that. And then once you thought of that, just think about where did that expectation originate from? So was the expectation, would you say it was a realistic one? Is it something that actually thinking about it, it was probably a bit unrealistic for you to think that would be the case? And it's useful if you could take that approach with a lot of things. So if you're finding yourself frustrated about the way things are going, I guess what I'm saying is just check back with yourself and think, okay, what expectation is this based on, and how can I maybe look at this differently, and how can I consider whether or not this is realistic or not? And that should help you in various different areas when you're dealing with the development of your baby and going through different stages of growth with your baby. So I'm just going to check in the comments. So, and welcome to anyone who's just joined recently. We are just going through the presentation. We have just talked about expectations versus reality, and now we're going to move on to talking about advice. So this, I saw this online and I thought this was really, really a good way to sum up the way that mothers sometimes feel about advice. So thanks for your constant advice for how I should raise my children, said no mother ever. The thing is with advice is that people just tend to give it. And sometimes it's solicited and a lot of the time it's unsolicited. So a lot of the time people will just give you advice. As soon as you get pregnant, it seems like everyone has a word of advice for you about what you should be eating, what you should be doing, how you should prepare for the birth. A whole load of things come up. And for some people, that's really good because they want that advice and they want that input. But for others, it can get annoying because it's not something you've asked for, but people feel the need to just share. And of course, once you have your baby, the advice just keeps coming and coming, and there's just more for people to talk about and more for people to advise you on. And so, yeah, it can be a bit much sometimes, especially when you're trying to adjust to your new life with your baby and your new family and all that comes with being a new mum. But the thing is, you have to remember that the people that are giving you advice, your well-meaning friends and family, they have an invested interest. So they love you, they love your baby, they want to make sure that you guys are okay. So often we can shun advice and we can get upset, but we forget that the people that are giving the advice are just trying to show that they care and they're just trying to do their best by you. So sometimes putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how you would feel if you were them can help you to maybe be a bit more accepting of their advice or yeah, just understand why it is they're sharing it. But you can't necessarily stop people from giving advice. You can't control somebody else, but what you can do is you can change the way that you react to that advice. One thing that is important to think about is your interpretation of what has been said. Oftentimes, and I think it's fair to say as women we do it a lot, we interpret what has been said and we sometimes make up stories in our heads. So someone will say something and they have said one thing, and in our mind, what they've said means something else. But that thing that the meaning we've placed on it isn't necessarily the meaning that they intended to communicate. Classic example of this is when I've had a day at home where it's been a bit hectic and I haven't had time to make dinner or even think about what's for dinner, and my husband will call on the way home and ask whether whether dinner's ready or if there's going to be dinner ready by the time he gets home. I'm automatically on the defensive because I feel like I didn't have time to do it and I should have. So by him asking me that question, I then place meaning on it and say, okay, he's asking me that because he thinks I should have done dinner. And then I start getting defensive and think, why does he think I should have done dinner? Doesn't he know what I was doing? When really, he was just hungry and he was calling because he wanted to know whether he should just stop and get something to eat or not. So I hope you can see that illustration that sometimes we place the meaning on stuff and then we get upset about it, but actually the person wasn't giving us that at all. And it can extend a lot to advice that comes from family, especially say from your mother-in-law or from the close family member. They might say something simple like, make sure you put a hat on the baby's head when you leave the house because it's cold. And you might interpret that to mean, well, she thinks that I'm not able to look after my son properly or my daughter properly, or she thinks that I'm not able to care for them properly because that's why she's making these comments. When really she just wanted to say that she thinks you should put a hat on. So I think it's important for us to, especially when we're in an emotional state and we might not be our usual calm selves, to take time when someone gives advice and just think, okay, why are they telling me this? Why are they giving me this advice? And where is it coming from? What place is it coming from? What's their motive for saying it? And don't just assume that the motive that you're giving them is the one that they're intending to share. So again, let's just stop and then just think about the last time that you got annoyed about some advice that you received. What upset you about that advice? Or what upset you about the advice, or what upset you about the way that the advice was given to you? If you want to share in the comments, that's fine. That would be great. So I'm just going to give you a few moments to just have a think. Okay, next up, we're moving on to talk about new identity. So I've put this quote at the top of this slide. A woman gives birth not only to her baby, but also to her new identity as a mother. When you give birth, you're giving birth to becoming a mother. Up until the point, whatever age you are, up until the point that you have your baby, you have been just you as an individual person. And then the moment your baby's born, actually even before that, the moment you conceive and you're pregnant and your baby's growing, you become a mother. And it's a whole new thing. It's a whole new side to you. It's a whole new level to your identity. And when your baby first arrives, it's all about the baby. Your motherhood state of mind emerges. You can only think about caring for your baby. That's the primary concern of yours, and your personal needs take a back seat. So I'm sure all of you can testify that in the early days, it's really difficult to fit in having a shower. Sometimes you've actually got to schedule it in. And if you've managed to, get up and have a shower, that's actually a thing. That's actually something that you celebrate, because having a moment to yourself or time to just do you, or just to eat, just basic things that you need to do, they seem a lot more difficult once you have a baby. And once you get into it, and once you start spending more time and getting used to being a mother, you then start to wonder, okay, so I'm a mum now, but what has happened to the old me? What's happened to who I was before? Because people just start referring to you as so-and-so's mummy, or when they come and see you, they don't even ask you how you are. They automatically want to ask how the baby is, and it's easy to then start feeling like, well, what about me as an individual? And I think a lot of the time we can worry about who we are, and we say we need to find who we are. It's important to remember that becoming a mum doesn't mean that you erase everything that happened in your life before. You've become a mother, so yes, this is a different aspect of your being. This is a different role that you have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is you. This defines you as a person, just as your job doesn't necessarily define you as a person. It's just an element of what you do, and being a mother is an element of who you are, but it doesn't have to define you. So if you can take some time to kind of just reflect on the things that you identify with as a person, and as a new mother, you can look at the different aspects of your new role and your new life, and just start to reflect on that. And one of the things that we sometimes do is we reflect badly on ourselves. So if we feel like we're struggling and we're not necessarily doing this motherhood thing justice, we might be like, oh, I'm just not good at multitasking, or I just find it really difficult to deal with the baby, or just do basic tasks. But if you was to ask a third party, if you was to ask somebody else what they think of you and what they think of the job you're doing, you'd probably get a really different view to the view that you have of yourself if you're in that kind of negative state of mind. So try it. It's good to maybe just ask a friend or a family member to describe you in 2 words, or to share with you 2 things that come to mind when they think of you, and just see how people are thinking. So you might realize that actually I am doing a good job, and I am the person that I'm the person that I want to be in this stage of my life, in this season of my life. So what I'm really trying to say is, don't beat yourself up too much about figuring out who you are, where you are. It's all gonna evolve as your baby grows, as you grow, as you become more settled and confident. Who you are as a mother is going to come out. I just say also, beware of comparisons with others. In our culture today, social media is amazing. I love it. I love Instagram. I love Facebook, but it can sometimes make people think that they should be doing stuff that they're not doing. You see lovely, profiles and pictures which have been filtered of people doing brilliant things with their baby, that they've been out and about, they're looking great, they've lost weight, they've done all sorts, and then you start to feel inferior, and you start to feel like, oh, I should have done that by now, or why are they having such a great time and I'm having such a hard time. But what we must remember is that people tend to post positive things. They tend to post their best selves, and they don't post pictures of their house looking upside down and the baby being sick all over them or crying the whole day. You don't see that side. So don't compare your daily reality with what you're seeing, which is what people put forward as reality, but really it's their most positive side. If that makes sense. So if you're struggling with figuring out your new identity, I would just say, just beware of comparing yourself with other people. And remember this, if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, just remember that there is no other person who has your blend of experience and your personality and your child and your family and your makeup. You are unique, you are you, and you are a wonderful person. So just celebrate that and embrace that, and just find what it is you want to do and who it is you want to be. And so, as I've said on this next slide, you are not, and nor will you ever be again the woman you were before. You're a new version of yourself, and you get to determine what that looks like. The great thing about being a new mum is that your child has a blank slate, and the type of child you want to raise and the parenting style you want to have, that's all up to you. So you get to kind of paint that, and the type of mother you want to be is up to you too. So if you just start thinking about your gifts and your strengths and what skills you've acquired since you've had your baby, you'll realize that you're doing pretty well, and that you're in a good place. So one thing I want you to do is just have a think now, and just name one positive change to you or your personality since having your baby. Is there anything you've noticed that's different about you that you like since having your baby? Just give you a few seconds to think about that. Okay, so I hope you've come up with something positive. I'm sure you have, and if you struggled with that, I would say speak to someone and ask them to tell you, because I'm sure there is definitely something that you can talk about in terms of a positive change since having your baby. And just embrace being you, and just enjoy being a mummy, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to conform to what other people say motherhood should look like, but really paint a picture of motherhood that you're comfortable with. So we're going to move on now to self-care. And before we do that, I think there's just one thing I didn't mention before when we were talking about advice, was that I wanted to talk about just setting boundaries. yes, it is important to accept advice from people and to look at how you're receiving that advice, but also if you are finding that it's too much and it's overwhelming and people are just too much in wanting to be involved in areas of your parenting that you're not happy with, I would say just set firm boundaries and just let people know that this is your unit, this is your family, this is your baby, and this is how you've decided to parent. So when you make parenting decisions, just be firm in those, and then just let people know what you choose to do and that it's not negotiable, and just go for it. So just a quick example with that is, if you choose to breastfeed or not breastfeed, bottle feed, breastfeed, people always tend to have an opinion over what you should or shouldn't be doing, how long you should be doing it, when you should be doing it. But I would just say, just trust your instinct, trust your gut, and just do what you feel is right. And then you can't go wrong with that, because if you're doing what you feel is right, then you won't be questioning yourself. Right. Okay. So let's move forward now. Now we're going to talk a little bit about self-care, looking after yourself. So when you become a mum, you're most probably the primary caregiver, but there might be circumstances where you're not, and your husband's taking on that view, or your partner's taking on that role, but yeah, primarily you're going to be the primary caregiver. And you as a mother are pretty much on duty 24/7. You're never off duty. Even if the baby's sleeping, you're still on duty. My mum says that once she's had a baby, you don't get to sleep until they're an adult. And I think even when they are an adult, you still don't sleep. So you don't sleep in the same way as you would have before you had children. So it's just really, really important that you look after you. If you don't, then you're not going to be able to give the level of care and attention that you need or want to give to your little one. If you're feeling run down, if you're tired, not so much tired, because that just comes with motherhood, but if you're feeling run down, if you're you're not eating, if you're not exercising, if you're not doing the things that you need to do to make sure that you're functioning well, then how is your little one going to get the best of you? This is not the way that a lot of people would refer to their little ones, but this is something that a midwife said that stuck into my head when I was pregnant. And she said that your baby who's growing on the inside is like a parasite, which isn't a nice way to refer to your baby, but bear with me in terms of the analogy. A parasite is something that lives off of another human organism and just takes and takes and takes away from that. And when you're pregnant, your baby does that. They take all the nutrients from you so that they can grow and that they can flourish. And once you've had the baby, they continue to be very, very demanding. They continue to take and take and take. And yes, they give back in terms of their smile and the joy that they give you, but physically they don't give back. They just continue to take. So if you don't make sure that you look after you, you're going to run yourself down, and then you're not going to be able to have a balanced lifestyle or the happy family life that you're probably hoping to create. So making self-care a priority is really not optional. It's essential for both you and your baby. I think when it comes to this area, a lot of mums start to feel guilty. They feel like they shouldn't be taking time out for themselves. They feel like they should be there for their baby and their family all the time. But in fact, taking the time out to do stuff for yourself is really, really important. So and it's gonna mean that everybody is better off, because if mum is happy, then everyone else should be happy. So I'm just going to share with you a few tips in terms of how you can prioritize self-care. Like how do you go about making sure that you're making time for you when you look at your schedule and you just feel like there is no time. Everything's all about the baby. There's no time to fit in doing stuff for yourself. Before I do that, I just want to say that when we say there's no time, it's not accurate. What we're really saying is that it's not a priority, because everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. And if you really want to get something done, you will get it done. So if you really want to make sure that you find time for yourself, then you will. So what you need to do is make it a priority and not make the excuse that actually there's not enough time to do that. Okay, so 5 tips then. The first one is to take short intervals of time for yourself. So you may not be able to say, right, I'm going to take a whole half an hour, a whole half a day and just go and do my own thing when my baby's a newborn and they need feeding regularly and I need to be around. But you can take short intervals of time. So when your baby's napping, yes, it's important to sleep when your baby sleeps. But if sometimes you just want to do something just for you, so whether that be have a long shower or a hot bath with candles, or read a book, or just catch up with a girlfriend, a friend that you haven't spoken to for a while, just having some time that's just time for you, carving that time out in the day. So if it means you getting up a little bit earlier before your partner goes to work so you can have a shower, or it means just while your baby sleeps, as I said, while they nap or when they sleep in the evening, just do it. Just find some short intervals, some short bursts of time in the day where you can just do something that you want to do for you. And the next one kind of feeds into that. So it's asking for help. You do need time off. Don't be a martyr. Don't feel like you need to just keep going and going and going. People will offer to help, and so take them up on it. If you need someone to come in and help you and watch the baby so you can do something that's important to you to do, or you want someone to come in and help with the housework so that you can spend the time that you want to spend with your baby, then do that. It's not a bad reflection on you that you're asking or you're reaching out for help. As the old saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. So don't try and be a one-man band or one-woman band and just do everything yourself. Just reach out and accept the help when the help is offered. The third thing is to say yes to things that can distract you from the daily routine and grind. So if you're feeling like you are doing the same thing all the time and you're getting a bit bored with the routine and you need a bit of change, then look out for opportunities to do stuff that are different. If people have invited you to go and do stuff that's different to your normal routine, go to new places, go to new baby groups, go to do new things in the area or with other people that you don't normally do things with. Doing that can just change things up and just make you feel a bit more feel that things are less mundane and feel like you've got more variety in your day. So yeah, say yes to new things. This number 4 is really important. This is being present and being mindful. I guess there's a lot of talk about being mindful recently and really living in the moment. And I think it's really important when you have a baby and when you have children that you do that. So the time that you're spending with your baby and the moments that you're spending with your child, that you're really present in that moment. So if you are playing with them, then play with them. Put your phone down, turn off your notifications. Don't worry about what's going on online, and just enjoy the time that you're spending, because they're going to grow up so fast and things are going to change so quickly. And so you want there to be quality time that you spent and you're forming quality memories. And equally, when you are doing other things, so when you do go to the gym or you do go out and go to a class that you want to go to, or like a music class or whatever it is you're interested in, when you do that, just be present there as well. Just enjoy what it is you're experiencing, and don't be worried about what's going on at home and thinking, oh, is the baby okay? And I wonder if they've gone to bed yet. And I wonder because then you're not enjoying the time and you might as well have just stayed at home. So being present in the moment, both with your child and not with your child, are absolutely essential. So I would definitely suggest that you practice that. It's not something that always comes naturally because our brains can just be going and going and going. But it is it is something that can be achieved if you put your mind to it and you practice. This last one I could have put first, but I've put it last. But it's really, really important to build a network of people who can just be a sounding board and sometimes just listen. So you all know what it's like when you've had a crazy day and you just need to vent. You just need someone to listen. Having a group of women or a group of friends who are experiencing the same thing as you, so they also have kids, and they can just empathize. Speaking to someone who's able to empathize with what you're going through is invaluable. Being able to really really share how you're feeling and what you're going through and feel like someone else understands is a great resource to have. So I would say build your network. If you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but I don't really know anyone or don't have a network, build one. Go to networking. I was going to say go to networking events. I meant to say go to baby groups. Go to anywhere where other mums hang out and just network. You've probably, in your work before you were a mum, you've probably done networking and you've probably had to do it for work. So you can use the same principles here. If you go to a baby group and you meet mums, you can just strike up conversation. How's your baby? How old are they? What's their name? And then just start chatting and then exchange numbers and meet up, and then do that a few times, and before you know it, you might have 2 or 3 people that are now in your network that you can reach out to when you're struggling and when you're having a difficult time. So yeah, it's really important to build that network. So I would say to make that a priority if you haven't already got a network, and if you have got a network, make sure you're using it. So that's self-care. So we're coming to the end of the presentation shortly. I just want to do a quick recap for anybody who wasn't there at the beginning and didn't catch the beginning and what we've covered so far. So we talked about talked about the 4th trimester and what it is. We talked about the fact that the 4th trimester is the first 3 months after a baby is born, and they're really adjusting to life on the outside of the womb and adjusting to everything that goes with the change from being on the inside to being in this big wide world. And we talked about the fact that it's a massive transition for parents, it's a massive transition for mum and for baby. And so there are things that you can kind of think about in terms of helping you in that transition. One of the things was to check your expectations and make sure that your expectations that you're setting around motherhood are not causing you to feel frustrated and irritated. So just considering where your expectations originate and thinking about whether or not they're realistic expectations and adjusting them accordingly. Then we talked about advice and the fact that sometimes when we are feeling maybe not as confident or feeling like we're not in a place that we want to be, we can sometimes be a bit sensitive to the advice that we receive, and we can place interpretations on what people say that are not accurate, and it's not necessarily what the person had intended. So it's about just thinking a bit about how we interpret things and looking at being a bit more mindful about placing meaning where meaning shouldn't be placed. And we talked about identity and embracing the fact that being a mum is a new aspect of your identity, but it doesn't have to be what defines you, and that you can think about the things that you still want to do and the things you still want to achieve, and you can work out or paint the picture of motherhood that you want to. You don't have to necessarily compare yourself to others and follow a blueprint that's been set out by somebody else. You and your family are unique, so embrace that and own that. And then we just talked about self-care and how important it is to make sure that you make time for you so that you can do the best for your baby and for your family, because you're topping yourself up with energy and with health and strength so that you can be healthy for them. So that's what we've covered today. It's a bit of a whistle stop tour through those things, and I hope that you found them useful. And if you have found today's session useful, it would be great if you could go over to our Facebook page, which is Coaching with Lightbox on Facebook, and if you could leave a review and leave a comment about your experience or the information that we've shared. If you have any questions at all, you can put them in the comments box. I'm just going to have a look and see if there's any. Or you can email Janine@lightboxcoaching.com, visit us at our website www.lightboxcoaching, and also if you're on social media, follow us on @lightboxpd on Twitter and @lightboxcoaching on Instagram. I do offer free one-to-one coaching sessions, one free session, a discovery call. If there's anything that you think you would want to work on as a mum, and you feel like having a coaching session where I would just work with you to identify some of the goals that you have and some of the challenges that you're facing, and we would put together a plan of action in terms of how you can move forward and just really help you explore what might be holding you back from getting to where you want to be, and what you're concerned about. So if you're interested in booking a free session, then do drop me an email at Janine@lightboxcoaching.com, and we can get that scheduled in for you. So I'm going to So I'm back on here. So we're back to, are you seeing me? Hi. I hope you found today useful, and I hope that I can be in touch with some of you and connect with some of you in the future. There will be more from Lightbox. So if you're interested in some future webinars and workshops that we're going to be doing, then as I said, follow us on social media, drop me an email if there's any particular areas of motherhood that you're struggling with, or things that you think would be useful to have in the form of another webinar or in the form of a workshop. Then I'd be happy to hear your comments and use those to form the basis of future programs that I put together. So yeah, it's been great hanging out with you on today's webinar, and I just wish you all the best in motherhood. It is the most amazing thing. You're doing an awesome job. You've got one of the most amazing jobs in the world, and I just wish you all the best, and I hope that you and your family continue to grow and you continue to thrive, and yeah, have a great rest of the evening, and hopefully be in touch with you all soon. So bye.